In Tibet, there was an opera called Achelamu. Where is Tibet? Tibet is where the snow falls. Tibet is where the river wakes up. Tibet is where the yak herder moves. Every year, during the 7th month of the Tibetan calendar, the Drepung Shoton yogurt festival is observed. Opera troupes and performers come from all over the world to play out ancient tales to those who are forever away from home. For centuries, yogurt is distributed to the gathering. The world comes to visit the monks at the end of their monsoon retreat. Where is Tibet? Tibet is where the snow falls. Tibet is where the river wakes up. Tibet is where the yak herder moves. For winters, they come down to the valleys. People wait for the milk and the curd, and there is festivity. Where is Tibet? Tibet is now everywhere, in exile. Where is Tibet? Sometimes an impossible question like that can be asked only by breaking it down into fragments. Sonam, Gompu and Kalimpong are both such fragments to link us up with the larger picture of Tibet and its opera. Sonamla has accompanied us to the Shoton on a personal mission. He is here also to obtain a copy of his great-grandfather's manuscript of the Tibetan language manual. Or perhaps it's a bridge across the lost chapters of his own family history, or to the lost universe of Kalimpong, a once thriving metropolis, British India's connect to China through Tibet. In 1949, Mao Zedong's Red Army marched into a peaceful Tibet and unleashed its own brand of cultural revolution on the streets of Lhasa. On the other side of the Himalayas, in Kalimpong, India, Sonam Gompu's family was running the Gompu's hotel for over 2 generations. After a failed uprising and a brutal Chinese takeover, thousands of Tibetans followed their leader, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, to one of the longest exiles in human history. Occupied Tibet today is a virtual no man's land, crisscrossed by 1,000 fences and sealed by political landmines. It's like the Great Wall itself, standing before the nomad who has kept the Tibetan plateau in place for centuries. The water tower of humanity, the third pole, source of mighty rivers like the Huanghe, Sutlej, Irrawaddy, Yangtze, Indus, Brahmaputra and Mekong, home to thousands of animal and plant species, birds and butterflies, minerals, gems and precious metals. Tibet is a sacred grove the world must save for its children. Save it through its stories, its songs and its dances. So the story goes that the Mahasiddha Thangtong Gyalpo built the first iron chain bridge over the Yarlung Sangpo River in 1430. As a Buddhist saint and scholar, making a bridge was for him an act of compassion, affording access and hence dharma to remote and cut-off villages. He traveled around southern Gompu region, introducing his ideas to sponsors who provided him with mules, manpower, and access to iron ore mines. Among his workforce were 7 sisters gifted in singing and dancing. The Mahasiddha composed operatic arias based on existing Lama Mani traveling monk tradition and trained the sisters in the art of performance. It is said that when they performed to raise funds for the iron bridges, people exclaimed, "Goddesses themselves are dancing." Ever since, in Tibet, there has been the opera called Achelam. However, the fateful year 1959 changed everything forever. Along with thousands of others, ace opera performer Nobu Shering, his wife, and brother fell captive to a Chinese labor camp near Lhasa. In 1961, Norbula and his wife managed to escape to India, while his brother was not so fortunate.
Yeah, maybe 1970.
Where was your house in Ghana?
Dosmel. Yeah.
Dosman.
Dosmel, I don't know because I'm young.
5 years
Five.
you came here only. It's too small.
Yeah.
You grown up here only.
Yeah, I grew up in
Your
Tibet.
name is? What do you name?
Chetan.
Chetan.
Yeah.
Chetan. And father's name is?
Nobutsri. Yeah. Usually they follow most of the Lhasa people. Many people they say lava.
Lava.
Not they didn't call Nobu. If I say Nobutsri, my pala, they say
Oh,
who's
lava.
Nobutsri?
Lava.
Yeah. When I say opera dancer lava, then everybody knows.
यहाँ का डायरेक्टर है ना टीपा का इसने कांटेक्ट किया है पाला को कोलंबो को यहाँ ओपरा मास्टर चाहिए फिर हम लोग इस टाइम साउथ में गया फैमिली साथ क्योंकि वो इंडिया गवर्नमेंट ने वो सेटलमेंट दिया ना इंडिया का पहले को भी दिया फिर बाद में फिर यहाँ से बोलते हैं टीपा से पाला आओ दोबारा वो टेस्ट करने का ओपरा का फिर 2 महीना यहाँ बैठते हैं फिर नीचे आते हैं साउथ में फिर 1 साल में 3-2 ऐसा बढ़ जाते हैं फिर मेरा अमला बोलते हैं बहुत मिस होते हैं सब साथ में आ जाइए आ जाओ फिर बच्चा लोग हम लोग ख्याल करेगा जहाँ भी स्कूल में भेजना है टीसीबी वगैरह फिर इसके बाद मैं और मेरा बड़ा बहन यहाँ तिब्बत में ज्वाइन कर दी
The Tibet-India trek that the Exiles walk remains one of the most dangerous in the world. Crossing the Himalayas on foot, hiding from mountain patrol, traveling through high passes, mostly by night, braving icy storms and terrifying emptiness, Norbu Shering and wife arrived in Kalimpong. Back home, a prisoner in his homeland, Norbu Shering's brother was forced to serve the Chinese state opera.
大渡河宽170公尺的英雄们冒着危险，在大渡河上又一次创造了历史。
When the extent and depth of loss is superhuman, the means of grappling with it transcend human limits. One looks for a language in which life can be called a river, and every action of the mortal human becomes an act of compassion, a sacrifice. In Kalimpong, Norbu Shering wasted no time in joining the new crusade of the opera in exile. procedures and styles in which Lamo is performed has taken many births through its many masters in the past 600 years. Opera masters young and old have worked tirelessly, often on meager resource and payments, to pass on the legacy of the crazy ascetic Chak Sampa, the iron bridge builder Thangtong Gyalpo. The best of them are here today on the eve of the 20 years of Shoton in exile. Refugees were pouring in every day, and no one had managed to bring the performance scripts out of Tibet. It called for a pure labor of love on the part of the young opera masters like Norbu Shering to craft the opera anew by painstakingly joining fragments from memory. With a pool of artists, rich costumes and jewelry bravely smuggled out of Tibet, was formed the first performing troupe to tour the refugee camps. Looking at 60s Kalimpong, one could say that in Tibet there still was an opera called Achelamu. For the new generations growing up in exile all over the world ever since, Achelamu opera has continued to be the bridge to a lost continent called home. Norbu Shering passed away 2 years back. His wife still lives at Tipa. His son Setan lives in Canada now and has come home for the Shoton. Yet again, at the old crossing of Tibet, Kalimpong and the opera in exile, Sonam Gompu discovers in Setan a childhood lived parallel to his own in 60s Kalimpong. So the story goes that the Mahasiddha Thangtong Gyalpo built the first iron chain bridge over the Yarlung Sangpo River in 1430. Watched over by protecting deities and bodhisattvas, it is a call to each one of us everywhere to halt for a moment and ask, what is Tibet? Seeking an answer to this question, the world must now gather at the third pole, the water tower where humanity can still meet the rest of the universe.
总体中风特别的跟人力不一样，或者不适
Sonam Gompu receives his great-grandfather's manuscript of the Tibetan language manual from Tashi Shering at Hotel Tibet. Wandering in the labyrinths of a new language, a new word lights up for Sonam Gompu, Bhardo. Chogyan Trungpa defines it as a tower in a no man's land, a space which is neither yours nor mine, neither this nor that, between death and rebirth, a space enough to pitch a tent and mount a dance. In the bardo of its long exile, as the Achilamo opera writes itself all over again, every story becomes a resurrection, a bridge across samsara. Once upon a time, when the king walked out of the palace, the kingdom gathered to look at the monk. Now, when the monk silently walks out of the kingdom, the world gathers around him to listen.
As an opera, also you see carry stories, very, very sort of moving stories. The karuna, compassion. Tibetan Buddhist culture. Also you see carry one important message of Nalanda tradition. That is the concept of Patitsamupa, sense of oneness of humanity. Same human being, we have to, individuals' interest, future, depend on the rest of the humanity, animals, birds, and fish, and even insect, fly. So something happened, certain change, temperature or climate condition, even suffering, not only human being. We human being, one way we find one way is to survive. Oh. But this animal, if something happened, there's no future. We have to die.
越过高山峻岭，穿过原始森林。我们带来全国各族青少年和亿万革命人士的心愿。
Across vast desert, in the middle of blizzard, earthquake, and the wild mountainscape, slivers of the Buddha lie scattered over faded map of the Silk Route. No one knows who will win the war over rivers and seas. No one knows who owns the mountains and the wind. It is dizzying to look into the eyes of epics and destinies. It is only human to make operas with one's blood.